Well, it is exciting. We have just finished one mini series on affordable housing, and we commence a new mini series on women's economic empowerment. And it gives me great pleasure to focus on a program very close to my heart that was focused in northern Nigeria. It's the Mafita program. It ran from 2015 through to 2020, and it worked on helping to empower young people in northern Nigeria, including some very marginalized young women, which it helped to provide technical training to. Favor, what's your thoughts on this new mini series and this particular episode?
Yes, thank you so much, Richard. I first heard about Mafita from you, obviously, but I think we were in a particular webinar and you were sharing, and I thought that that was so inspiring. And not to just to hint rather at the stories that we're going to cover with our two guests today, is that I thought to myself, this is the reason why we do this. This is the reason why we work in international development, just because of the immense opportunities that there is to change the lives of people. And so getting to explore Mafita has been truly inspiring. And it got me thinking, Mafita. Mafita sounds like Hausa, and I decided to do a bit of research. But I think it's only fair that I give it to the northerner among us and ask Yasmin. Yasmin, what does Mafita mean? And how do you think the meaning of the word is exemplified through the program itself?
All right, thank you, Favor, for giving me the floor. So yes, Mafita is a Hausa word. It means solution. Solution to a problem. It means answer. It's like delight in a dark situation. So I do think that the program brings that out of the situation they were in. They did go to many local rural communities to help out people that probably lost hope and were in very deep economic problems, and most of them were not educated. They either dropped out of school, or they they never attended school in the first place. So these were people that felt like society failed them, and then the Mafita being the solution came, and it brought them to light, and it brought them to see that, oh, there's hope. They can be re-educated. They can be reintegrated into a functioning society. They can also contribute economically. So yes.
Yeah, it was certainly a program, Yasmin. I had the privilege of meeting some of the young people that were part of the Mafita program, who went through the community skills development centers in Kaduna and Zaria and other places. But those stories those experiences will stay with me throughout my life, seeing the transformation that happened in their lives, and how meaningful that was. So I'll go more into those stories at the end, but um, uh, it certainly was a program which I experienced very differently from other programs.
Yes, and I would just say that what a fitting name to such a program that's, as Yasmin said, a light is a solution. And I think that the testimonials or the beneficiaries themselves have become lights to other people in their communities. And so let's just talk a bit about the guests. So I'm going to talk. Our first guest was Hawa Umar. Hawa Umar worked on the Mafita program, and she's a gender specialist. And so it was really insightful to hear, not just also as a member of the program, as a team member of the program, but also from her own lens as a woman.
Our other esteemed guest would be Mr. Omar Nohu, and he brought so much light again to the beneficiaries of the program and what they did, challenges they encountered, and yeah, so we asked them the questions, and he engaged us with very insightful answers.
Great. Let's have a listen to what they had to say.
My name is Hawa Umar. I'm a gender specialist with expertise in gender-led investing and women economic empowerment. Got over 13 years experience in gender mainstreaming and women economic empowerment. I work with a Canadian funded project implemented by Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund, The program is investing in women in Nigeria, now in Kano.
My name is Omar Mohammed, and I've been one time privileged to be the team leader of the Mafita program, and one of the most exciting programs I've been on. So thank you for having me on.
So I wanted to ask if you could give us an overview of the Mafita program and its core objectives,
Okay.
particularly how they related to women.
Okay. The Mafita program was funded by DFID, then FCDO implemented by Adam Smith International in Kano, Jigawa, and Kaduna states, which is about enhancement of socio-economic opportunities for marginalized youths in northern Nigeria by equipping them with market-relevant skills through informal apprenticeship, especially focusing on women, which ranges from the age of 15 to 24 years, and also marginalized groups like the Al-Majri children, the Islamic and Quranic school age girls, and persons with disability. So the Mafita approach started with a lot of stakeholder engagement right from the beginning. A lot of stakeholders were engaged in terms of community stakeholders, Almajri and Zambia groups, the caregivers of these beneficiaries, community leadership, traditional institutions, government agencies as ministries, departments, and agencies, and also foundations, and also the inclusion of the trades associations as part of the community engagement. A lot of town hall meetings were also conducted to have these women, excluded women, enrolled or brought into the system. So the Mafita approach was really, really inclusive in terms of the various stakeholders were all brought on board so that the system would just flow without any challenges. So the engagement of this traditional institute has supported the shifting of minds of these husbands and caregivers to accept the project wholeheartedly because there were a lot of sermons in Friday prayers, during Friday prayers, during other town hall meetings, and even meetings with the district heads of some of the communities. And there were a lot of sensitization done by the community leaders, not the project itself, but the community leaders. So that way, the husbands or the caregivers now accepted the project because they have seen their own. So they have ownership. They feel that this is ours. So this has supported a lot towards the shifting of minds of these husbands and the caregivers of our Mafita projects. There were considerations for software skills also. For example, let's say even agency, and then there were all, other trainings like safeguarding. Mafita, one key thing for Mafita, it incorporated safeguarding for both the beneficiaries and even the trainers, which other programs do not do. So this was a plus for the Mafita project. The safeguarding training was even translated, the guidelines and the safeguarding manual was also translated into the local language of the state, which is Hausa mostly. So it allowed for comprehension by both beneficiaries and even the trainers, the mastercraft persons. And they now understood, and even parents were happy with that because they know that parents and caregivers or husbands, they know that yes, we have this safeguarding, even there were dedicated hotlines to report any incidents of harassment or gender-based violence. So you see that they were comfortable. They feel that their words are now being protected. And even the timing for the training also mattered because usually the training is in the morning and it's not every day, 3 days in a week. And then for those that were going through the foundational skills training, like the English, numeracy, and also entrepreneurship, it was on weekends and it is from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So by 1 p.m. it ends, and you know that your daughter is coming back home to support with the household chores, and also if she's going to Islamia school, which starts at 3 or 4 p.m. So you see, the Mafita intervention does not intrude or infringe into other responsibilities of these beneficiaries. So these are the things that really supported Mafita to be an exceptional project in the northern Nigeria.
So I think Mafita program at that time was, conceived uh, because of issues around the poverty divide, marginalized youth, a growing youth population in the country, and then there were these issues of insurgency just beginning to happen in Nigeria and what have you. And so it was conceptualized to sort of try to provide another pathway for marginalized youth to sort of find purpose in life through the acquisition of skills. And then obviously that would lead a pathway towards, economic, what do you call, sustainability, in order for them not to be attracted to, say, insurgency and things like that. So there still is a bulging youth population in Nigeria, and quite a number of them are not privileged to sort of go through formal education. And so Mafita program provided that pathway to do that, for them to acquire skills, and not only just to acquire skills, but skills that are recognized. So because the skills that were being delivered, um, under the National Skills Qualification Framework, which has been a bit nascent in Nigeria at that time, but it's a parallel pathway recognizing, skills and providing certificates that are equivalent to formal education at different levels. So that was the intent and purpose of the Mafita program. So the program basically, provided an easy entry point for marginalized youth. So most skills programs you'd find have some kind of, you know, pre-qualification, academic qualification that's required. You have to have like, primary school certificate or something of that nature in order for you to join. So recognizing that there are lots of, young people who haven't had the privilege of going through formal education, and also a lot of them are also dropouts, for many reasons. And so the Mafita program created a platform for, an entry point that did not require, uh, you know, pre-academic qualification. We only required the individual to be out of school, out of formal education, or a dropout, and within a certain age bracket, so because we were targeting youth. So those are the primary things. So it created that, entry point for people who have been marginalized, and hence the word marginalization, people who aren't in formal education. And that's one. Two, as I said earlier, it then offered an opportunity for them to also find value in attaining the skill, because it had a recognition. So back then, the NSQF provided for levels level 1 to 6. Level 1 is the entry point. Level 2 was equivalent to primary school certificate. Level 3 was equivalent to secondary. Level 4 was equivalent to a diploma. Level 5 a degree, and level 6 was equivalent to postgraduate. It's since been changed by the NBTE, the regulator. It's now all the way to level 9 right now. But back then it was level 1 to 6. So we were training youth to level 2, and level 2, equivalent to primary school certificate, would still give you enough skills to enter into the labor market. So it meant that, within a short period of, say, 0 to 9 months, you're able to acquire a certain set of skills that would enable you to find something you could do within the labor market, either as employed or self-employed individual. So that's kind of what it brought to the table. So it brought about the systemic certification process. It brought about, the ease of entry into the skills acquisition. And then finally, it also had a component which was to support the individuals. So it's one thing to learn how to be a carpenter, right? But then its application is different. You've acquired the skills, but to then understand how to run a business, understand how to keep your books, or even access markets and things like that, it's another thing entirely. So there was that component as well, which was also then to support with market access and sort of access to finance, access to tools, and things like that. So it's a multi-tiered kind of intervention that it came about with.
So we would like to hear about any specific challenges that were encountered during the Mafita program.
So I think I wouldn't say there were too many challenges from a program perspective, because we had the numbers. I mean, there are thousands and millions of youth out there that are seeking to get this. So because the project was designed in such a way that it could sort of penetrate the bureaucracy and get to the fabric of the society, meaning that we did a lot of engagement with religious persons and entities, governments, and then within societies, for example, there are trade associations that we also worked with, and then we also worked with within communities, so the community leaders and things like that. So that made it a bit easy for us to. So as if there was any challenge, it would managing the demand. That was most of the challenge, because there was a lot of demand. I remember one time when we were doing screening, there was a 65-year-old man, who had joined the queue and was wanting to also learn a trade. So I think because of the way it was structured and designed, the major challenge was how to manage expectations, and stuff like that. And so from an individual perspective, like you rightly said, there are people with disabilities who found it difficult to transport themselves to the location, to the training location, one. And then it was also, convincing so the COSDEX themselves, because we had to rely on the governments to renovate these institutions. So therefore, they were responsible for the infrastructure and other things like that, and therefore to sort of ensure that they make the provisions required for people with disabilities to attend. So creating ramps next to stairways and things like that for people in wheelchairs and a couple of. So these are some of the problems, obviously. Addressing the needs of the individuals, the specific individuals, and because it was a dual type of training, it was the COSDEX were the community skill centers, which were like the classroom type, and then we had the apprenticeship model, which was pretty much embedded, within the communities. So these two models helped to address the different aspects. So in terms of accessibility, because the skill centers were already located in certain areas and there were classroom type structures, there was a limit to the number of people you could take in. So we had a cap of like 30 per class, in order to make the training a bit effective. So that was a limitation in terms of the uptake. But from the apprenticeship model itself, lent itself more to sort of accommodating more people, because within communities, the master crafts persons that were identified and trained to deliver the training itself, equivalent to what would have been delivered at a COSDEC, were then given 4 apprentices each, a minimum of 4. Some took as many as 10, and therefore the more the MCPs you had, then the more apprentices you could then enroll. So if I remember correctly, I think the apprenticeship model delivered about 90% of the output from the skills training as a whole. The COSDEX took about 10%, if I remember correctly. But that was so the significant part of the kids that were trained came through the apprenticeship model. But the limitation with the apprenticeship model, it has its pros and cons. The limitation is that you wouldn't have the ability to sort of provide some of this specialized training needs for people, because you're embedding someone within someone's business. But then the advantage was that you could get more numbers through the apprenticeship model. And like I said earlier, there was a lot of engagement. We engaged the traditional title leaders for them to understand. So, everything is about context. So once the context is understood, you understand the context of the society, the culture, the religion, and they also understand the objectives. Then there's a fusion of objectives. So much early on in the program, there was a lot of engagement. We had very senior people on the program who were able to through their own networks and the confidence they inspired within certain circles, able to bring everybody on board. So, and then the nature of the training itself, because um, if you sort of try to, restructure the fabric of the society in order to accommodate an intervention, it's always very difficult. But if it's embedded, within the structure of the community, then it's a lot easier. We had a lot of, like I said, the apprenticeship model was more built in within communities, and therefore you had a catchment area. The MCPs were known to the communities because their businesses were there. We also used different structures to sort of identify the beneficiaries. So we had the ulamas, that's the religious leaders. We had disability centers that were able to. So the identification itself came from within the society of the beneficiaries, and then the catchment areas for each beneficiary was a radius of no more than 3 kilometers in order to allow for someone to go easily and come back. Um, and then we even had home-based MCPs, right? So we had women in their own homes, married women, who were into trades like tailoring or catering and things like that, who are able to take on, younger girls to come in and train. So it was the whole model that was adopted that was able to sort of address some of these challenges. Some other programs haven't had buy-in, this level of buy-in, because there was a mismatch between understanding context on both sides of the divide. But I think this program, Mafita program, did that successfully ab initio, right from the beginning, and that's why it was a bit easy. And mind you, we had a target of 20% women, I think, and then even from the disabilities and marginalized, we also had another target of 20% women. But believe it or not, we had about 60% enrollment of women on the program. So that just showed that there was a lot of buy-in, to the program at community level.
Can you speak to some of the partnerships from the Mafita program, both with the private sector and with government?
On the public sector, like I said, it was a cost share model, especially for the COSDEX. The states were required to sort of renovate the centers that had been identified, so they had to make an investment. Whilst the project itself was responsible for the delivering of the equipment, providing equipment, and also providing training for the COSDEC staff. So it was a struggle, depending on, and again, it's a budget thing. It's a budgetary thing. States always struggle with, having a cash back in their projects. So it's not like new to the program itself. So, but the level of interest also showcased that there was a lot of interest, but then sometimes the renovation was very slow. So we had more successes in some states than others, obviously, but then it was a contributory model, and therefore the states were required to invest. In the private sector, especially with the apprenticeship model, in the first year of the training, we kind of provided incentives to the MCPs in the form of tools and equipment to sort of incentivize them to support that. But also realizing that, beyond the program, it will be difficult to sustain. So from the second round of interventions, we, instead of providing tools and equipment, we kind of just incentivize them through the business advisory services that we provided to the beneficiaries. It was then extended to the MCPs themselves. So helping them improve their businesses, making sure that they have access to finance where they needed it, and so on. So facilitating those kind of things in order for that with their businesses to grow, and therefore that incentive would then trickle down to they you know sort of taking on more students. We created this was a very successful model in Kano. We created, or rather, we facilitated the coming together of the trade associations to create a platform. So they created an umbrella body, and that umbrella body till today still exists. And I think it was a year ago or so, through their own initiative, they reached out to high net individuals in Kano, and they got some funding, and they identified beneficiaries and rolled out training for about 100 beneficiaries. And I was privileged to be invited actually to come and attend the graduation ceremony of those 100. And this is how many years after the Mafita project. So it was very pleasing to see that those structures still remained and continue to exist. Maybe not so much in the other states, because the model started with apprenticeship model in Kano, and then the other two states, we pushed for the COSDEC model. And then, following the first round of training, lessons were learned from on both sides, and then the two different programs were tried to be infused into all the states. So the states that adopted the COSDEX continue to do the COSDEX. Kano, that we started the apprenticeship model continued in Kano. So it's a mix of sort of results that we're seeing from the different states, but the public-private sector engagement did result in other things. I'm not so sure that the states would have continued to invest. The COSDEX that were set up still exist and they still continue to run, but I don't see that they've invested in more. But the apprenticeship model continues to exist, and some of those MCPs have now been part of the World Bank Ideas program. They've been sort of invited to join other skills programs because of the knowledge they gained from the Mafita. So it's been a huge ripple effect, in fact, from the program itself. Linking into subsequent programs and other things like. Yeah. So again, context is everything. But in the context of Nigeria, especially at the time where the economy had taken a hit and it was in recession, so there were no new jobs really. People weren't hiring, and so the argument about displacement did not really hold. A lot of what we tried to do was to push a significant number of the individuals who had the interest to do it towards self-employment. And so we've got a lot of success stories in terms of some of these individuals, taking on board, access to finance, getting equipment, and beginning their own sort of small skills jobs. And we've seen that across the states. So I dare say that I don't think that argument holds water for in the case of Mafita. We've seen more self-employment than job displacements, if at all. And this is evident by the fact that it was an economy in recession at the time anyway, and so there was not a large-scale amount of hiring of new jobs, and also even the apprenticeship model itself, there was a lot of retention by the MCPs. So the retentions were not job displacements, so were additional jobs. So MCP recognizing that out of the 4 people who have trained, this particular individual, seems to have, the skill sets are quite what I need to expand my business, and therefore I can then bring on board someone else who can help me also manage some of the work I'm doing. So we also saw a lot of that. So I don't buy the argument that it was a lot of just job displacement in terms of the Mafita program specifically.
So government plays key role in any intervention. For every program, the first point of entry when you come to a country or a state is introduction or to government, the key relevant ministry, department, of agency. So Mafita also worked with government to see that whatever intervention the project is doing aligns with it aligns with what government is also doing or trying to do, and then maybe improves on, because with government there will be a lot of delays, there will be a lot of political issues. So Mafita always finds a way of going through that. That is why it is important to do a political economy analysis, identify champions who can be able to push for whatever intervention you come through with, and then work through that champion to see how it gets to government and how that acceptance is being pushed. So engagement with government is really key from the onset of whatever intervention you're bringing, and then making sure that your objective also aligns with what government is doing. So it's not that Mafita came in with this program and the government must align with what Mafita has brought on board. So this has supported the Mafita project. I think if this recording would have been, for us to go to this woman, you will see a lot of difference. How this, intervention has been sustained, especially in Kano. The success we see in Kano is beautiful. One, owing to the fact that, the crowdfunding that was established in Kano has been sustained. So a lot of people, a lot of philanthropists are able to still put in money into that crowdfunding and still support women going into a lot of trades, youths, and people with disabilities, especially orphans and vulnerables. And then, in terms of sustainability, I can tell you right now that there are a lot of these women whose lives has been transformed, and they continue to take more apprentices and train them. And even with our mastercraft persons, the trainers, I can assure you that we have a lot of them who are now competent trainers that have even been employed by Dangote Skills Acquisition Center, and they continue to train more people in that center. So this has been sustained, and we have seen a lot of them who have opened shops. They have even formed coalition. During Mafita, we formed a coalition called Kayedev. Is a coalition of trade associations which was formed during Mafita. All the chairmen of trade associations, all trades were now brought in as a coalition and were registered. So post Mafita, another coalition was formed for Mafita for women, which is called the Madafa, and it is solely women that are into that coalition. There are women in garment making and women in leather works that you mentioned. They are doing beautiful handbags, and they still continue to get even grants from GIZ in terms of in-kind grants, equipment. So I'm happy to say that yes, this has been sustained and it's growing within the years.
Thank you. So the next question is, what were some of the most inspiring transformations you witnessed?
Loads, and when you see the transformation, it's mind-boggling. So I will give two examples, out of many. So one from COSDEC, one from apprenticeship. So in Kaduna, we had this boy, and I still speak to him till today. We still communicate. His name is Jibril. He was the head boy of the COSDEC in Kaduna, in Mando. Prior to his enrollment, he was called in the Hausa term Yaron Bola. These kids that scavenge from rubbish dump sites. That's what he would do. So he'd go to scavenge things and then sell the odd wire and things like that. That's what he was doing. So he was known for that, and he enrolled into the program. At the end of the program, he was retained part-time by a company called Blue Camel. He did electronics, and he was retained. It was a solar company, so he was retained by them that's where he did his sort of like 2 months after program training. And so they retained him, and at the closeout event, when we invited him to come and sort of give his experiences, he was on the stage crying, indicating that, barely a year before, this is what he was doing. He had no hope in life. This was what he was scavenging dump sites and other things like that. But then the day he felt that, his life had taken a turn was the day he was sent to another state, and he was in an aircraft, seated in a plane, flying from Abuja to Cross River to go for a project. And he looked around and said, "Jibril, is this you? You know, this is me. Flying to a location to go and sort of on a project site to go and work there." So it was hugely transformational for him. The other one I like to say is there was a young girl who was married off at 17, and sometimes, a lot of the times, you see these kind of things in impoverished societies as a way to sort of push away the responsibility of keeping the children, because the parents aren't able to sort of fend for them. So she was married off, didn't go to school, didn't attend school, married off at 17. Married off at 16, I'm sorry, divorced at 17, came back home with a child. So not only is she back home with additional responsibility now of the child, that she had no prior skills or education to support her in any way. Father was aged, and so it was almost like a sorry situation. She happened to get into the Mafita training, learned leatherworks as a skill, and after graduation, she was one of the people that went into self-employment. She got a loan to acquire a sewing machine and some tools and some working capital, and she became the breadwinner of the family. She herself trained her two younger sisters, trained her brother's wife, who was living as part of the family as well. So she had three apprentices under her. And when you go to visit their compound, it's especially towards the Salah period, it's like a small factory. Within the courtyard of the house, there's all leather parts and cutting up pieces, because they're supplying shoes and bags, to the markets and different things. So she became the breadwinner, and this transformation happened in less than a year. So it's phenomenal. So we've seen real transformation. One of the proudest moments I had was, visiting Kano and going to one of the apprenticeship locations. There was a tailoring cluster. And so this guy had taken on an apprentice. Some apprentices, they had graduated cohort one, and then he had taken another set of apprentices for cohort two. And so when we went to visit, one of the cohort one beneficiaries had been retained by him, and she was now teaching this cohort two young girl how to operate the sewing machine. So you could then see that ripple effect. She was now a trainer herself. This is one program that has really shown how transformation can happen within such a short period of time.
So I can say that there were a lot of transformation, like I mentioned, even for the mastercraft persons who were just, identified as some people that have skills in doing trades, especially let me talk about the garment making. I have seen some mastercraft persons who are just doing their work within their households, and then but they were identified by Mafita and they were trained, and after they got the certification from NSQF and MBTE, and as a result of that, they now trained the Mafita beneficiaries. So post Mafita, we have seen them transforming into competent trainers who are being sought after from organizations like I mentioned a while ago, Dangote Foundation. It's an ultra-modern training center now in Kano, which is sponsored by Dangote Foundation. So we have a lot of our Mafita Mastercraft persons who have been transformed. You can see that their life has been transformed, and they have many more apprentices now under them who they are training. And you could see from the quality of products they now produce that really their lives has been transformed, and they market them. They go to international trade fairs across national and even within the state, and they display their products, and these products are being really recommended, and a lot of projects are coming after them, like GIZ. They are using our Mafita platform to reach out to a lot of our beneficiaries and other massacred persons. And we could see that they have supported their households in terms of getting back their kids to school, in terms of continuing to sponsor their children also, and also making sure that their kids also go into the trades they are already into. For example, my kids also now support me, and they are learning the garments trade, they are learning the leather works, they can do handbags, and they take them to, if there are trade fairs or shows in Abuja from Kano, they go and they represent Kano. So you see, their lives have been transformed. And there are a lot of testaments from a lot of beneficiaries. Sometimes they even call us to say that they don't know how to continue to thank Mafita for what they have done in their lives. So they can see the impact in their lives. And they always wish and pray that there will be another Mafita project in Kano. So I think all those that have partaken in the Mafita project, from the funders to the implementers to the staff who have worked, I think it's a very happy. I just don't know how to explain the joyous moments that and the happiness we feel when we come along this kind of people in our lives, because we always meet them either in the markets. Sometimes we don't even recognize them. They will say, "Hey, Gia, how are you?" Blah blah blah, and we begin to, "Oh, I don't know this person," and he will call your name. But if he sees that you don't really recognize, he say, "Hey, Jiaba, it's from Mafita." We can't thank you enough. You have changed our lives. You know, the financial literacy training, we can now keep records of our businesses, our transactions. You have transformed our lives, not only in our businesses, even in our family matters. We have seen a lot of differences, the safeguarding training, the grow your business training, the pathway to entrepreneurship. You know, they really acknowledge this and they are happy with it. They keep telling us whenever we meet them. And whenever there is an event in Kano, they keep repeating. And I still belong to the one of the WhatsApp group of Mafita, Massacre person. You see a lot of information or a lot of news about Mafita, Mafita has done, and they keep reposting pictures of trainings they have attended. So you could see that yes, Mafita is a really positive project, which was not supposed to end anyway.
All right. Thank you very much. Can we hear a bit about the role that context played in the Mafita program?
So I think, like you just said, context is everything. So the entry point should, to understand what are the unique challenges and what shapes the thinking in the community, and what are the opportunities that women can take within certain communities. So it's not to sort of uh, fundamentally try to rechange or rethink how it can be done, but try to sort of infuse the thinking into the current structures, and then gradually sort of begin to reform that. So let me give an example. In northern Nigeria, particularly, women lean more towards certain trades: catering, tailoring, beauty, and things like that. Other things like auto mechanics, carpentry, welding, and fabrication are seen to be more, men's vocations. We did have a few women that went into some of these, vocational trainings. Uh, so it's about trying to sort of showcase to the society and community how those skills can be applied within the context of the society. For example, young girls who have now trained electronics. So the selling story would be to the community would be that upon graduation they can form a gang of a team of 5 or so working together, and because traditionally the men folk usually go out, so trading is a big vocation in the northern Nigeria. So they go to the markets and things like that, or they go to the shops, whilst the women stay back home. If you did need a repair in your house, electrical repair and what have you, you're more comfortable calling a gang of young girls, female girls to go into your house, even if you're not there to go and do the repair. They can interact with the women folk within the house. So it's a bit more comfortable. So I remember having this conversation with the secretary to the government of one of the states when we were talking about what trades are ideal for girls and not. And so I was telling him about its application. Let's not see each trade for it has to be sort of straitjacketed into kind of having to open a mechanic shop. No, if it's an auto mechanic shop, a skill that someone has acquired, she can have these services within for women for so it's about its application. So that those kind of things need to be sold to the community for buy-in, and that's one. Two, early engagement to understand the objectives, to gain confidence, to ensure that they also give feedback is also important. So it shouldn't be forced upon them or just appear to them that something alien has come and there's been no consultation. So those are the kind of things that would ensure. And once it's designed properly, for example, we had the female MCPs, home-based MCPs and what have you, that led to the huge uptake of women so people will be more comfortable, the girl child leaving their house and going into Malam Haruna's house because his wife is teaching tailoring, rather than to go and sit with an MCP that they don't know, and with all the attendant risks that it can come with. So understanding the fabric of the society, designing programs in such a way that it gives confidence to the folk and not trying to sort of restructure the way the society works are the critical factors to consider.
The key traits where women thrived and where Mafita was able to leverage were the garment making, the leather works, and the cosmetology. Ordinarily, in the local context and even cultural, women usually do their businesses, small trades within their households. Once you have the machine, you can be able to operate from home. So these three trades were really exceptional for the Mafita project and the beneficiaries: garment making, leather works, and cosmetology. Because women and beautician or beauty things, it has been there even in cultural or in northern Nigeria, even with the cultural norms or religious norms. At least women do make up during weddings, during festivities. So that was one key thing that made the cosmetology trade to be able to thrive and to be able to have that acceptance by both caregivers and parents or husbands of these beneficiaries, because they can operate from their houses. It does not have to, a lady will not have to go out of her home. Customers can come in, and most customers are female also. So parents and the caregivers were comfortable about that. And then in terms of garment making, yes, what Mafita did was to give them these machineries, part of the support that Mafita made, So, and this can be operated within the household. A lady must not go out to go and learn the trade. And also, identifying female trainers was one key thing. You see, identifying female trainers supported in having this success, because the trainer will be in her house and she gives them time where she's not attending to household chores for these trainers to come in and learn. And parents and caregivers or husbands were comfortable that they are going into a female household, a married woman's household, to learn this trade. They are not going to a man's shop or in the market to learn this trade. So that one also supported the Mafita intervention. So these three trades were really exceptional, even though there were other male-dominated trades that we have seen women during the Mafita intervention, where women were able to go into the male-dominated trades. For example, the satellite installation, There is also the auto mechanic and also carpentry. We have seen even in Kano here, the satellite installation trade had a lot of girls learning it and also excelling, because one key thing that worked for satellite is most of the times when you have issues, challenges with your satellite installation at home, it is that comes into the house. And for a traditional Hausa person, does not want a man coming into his household to just to make repairs on the dish or something or on the decoder. But once Mafita started this training of female into male-dominated roles, especially the satellite, people were happy. Now we'll have girls coming in to fix my even when I'm not around. Because traditionally, once your satellite gets fault, you will have to be in the house as a man, even if you are in the market. For a man to come into your household, according to tradition, is you have to be at home. So it has to be within the time where you are at home, either before you have gone out to work or market, then the guy comes in to fix your satellite or your decoder. But with the female coming into this street, you are happy even if you are not at home. It's a lady that will come into your house and fix it, and you know that there is no any challenge. You are comfortable. So this has worked for these girls going into the male-dominated trades. And so Mafita was, leveraged on this, and then had that acceptance by both caregivers, husband, and even the society. I think it was really an exceptional thing for the community, especially because I was part of the monitoring team that went to monitor the satellite girls in their around the market in one of the localities in Kano. And if you could see the excitement from people, how happy they were that yes, and the comments coming out, testaments that yes, we are happy, we will now have girls coming into our homes to fix our satellites, to fix our decoders. We don't have to be around. We can go to our work or our markets and do our businesses. We are comfortable that it's a female that is coming into my household. I don't have to tell my wife, cover your body, go into the inner room. So yes, Mafita's intervention was really a success, and it was really well accepted by community members.
Finally, if redesigning Mafita, what do you think could have been done better? And also, can we hear just some of your concluding thoughts and perhaps insights for other development programs?
I think the way TVET programs are assessed, perhaps maybe we should take rethink it, because sometimes the assessment is say what's the value for money? How much am I spending to train one individual? And therefore, if that's the correlation, then you might struggle in the immediate to see what the value is. But programs like Mafita that are designed to be local economic development programs, because they bring in a lot of things into one. One, at the systemic level, we worked with the MBT and other organizations, at institutional level, to sort of, bring in into the national occupational programs more curricula. So we could then sort of, create the certification required for each of those trades. So a lot more trades were now, built into the NSQF program. That's number one. Number two, creating a systemic way of, training master craftspersons to deliver this kind of training. So they have the skill, but understanding the methodology of how to deliver NSQF was something that the program introduced at apprenticeship level. And at the end of the program, we had trained about 7,000 MCPs, and they continue to provide value to different programs. Some of them have been enrolled by the Dangote Business School. Some of them have been enrolled by GIZ programs. Some of them have been enrolled by UNICEF. Some of them have been enrolled by the World Bank Ideas Program, and a whole host of. So they continue to add value in terms of delivering that kind of training, years after the program. Third aspect is that within local communities, because we embedded the business advisory services, and some of these MCPs also, and I'll tell you a quick story here. There was a cluster, Mechanics Village Garage in Jigawa State, where the cluster of mechanics were supported by the business advisor who was, training the beneficiaries. But then we sort of helped them create like a VSL, a village savings and loan kind of system. But in this model, we kind of trained credit officers amongst them. And so there were, there was a contributory aspect into the pool of funding. And then each mechanic would be allowed to sort of access a certain amount based on his contribution as a loan. And it will have to go through like an accredited appraisal by the individual members. And by the end of the program, there was evidence to suggest that some of them were taking as much as 1.5 million, as a loan, and then they could repay back. And in fact, the feedback we got from them was that they never thought they could do anything like this. But this has sort of created an access to finance platform for them that they don't need to go to banks anymore. So if you the sum total of everything, if you look at it, the ripple effect, the multiplier effect, if you train an individual that becomes a breadwinner in a household of say 6, 7, 10 people, the ripple effect of that is incredible. So if you look at the sum total of everything, I think it's programs like this that are directly transformational within local economies. And so a lot of that fails to sort of filter through because we keep the impact assessment at a very high level. What are the numbers, what's the output, number of training and things like that. So I think lessons can be learned from this in order to see how to sort of build resilience within economies. And this is one model that can do. So let me give from the perspective of Mafita. I think we had more problems with the public sector than we had with the private sector. Getting the public sector to understand this impact, and understand that, growing your economy, the fastest way to do it is to get people into economic activity. Once, more people are adding value and services to an economy, that automatically grows the economy, grows the GDP. And one of the simplest ways to do it is through these mechanisms like this. A lot of states come up with programs, what they call empowerment programs. And the traditional way of doing it is to either hand over cash or hand over a tool, and there's a large celebration, and then and that's it. And then there's no follow through. I think, and I'll give an example. I won't mention the state. There was a state where they had an empowerment program, and then we convinced them to include some of the Mafita beneficiaries in that program itself. So there were about 20 beneficiaries out of about 200 that participated. And, because we ensured that we knew the tools and assets that they needed, and therefore for catering, for example, they needed pots, pans, Bunsen burner, those kind of things that would sort of, get them to practice their trade easily. And the cost to that is really negligible. But the larger percentage of the people got almost 200 times the value of what each of these Mafita beneficiaries got. But if you go back and see its application, you see that it was more practical and pragmatic and perhaps even more sustainable because it comes with kind of some support around it. So we're saying that skills alone would not do it. Granting equipment also and funds would not do it. You need to build a system that you do impart the skills, the knowledge, and then there's a bit of hand holding in terms of what that individual requires. Like I said earlier, it's one thing to learn how to do carpentry, but what's the application? Are you going to be producing classroom furniture? Are you doing roofing, for example? Is that your specialization? So how you're applying it is where you need sort of the business skills to understand where's the demand and what markets can you penetrate to go into, and that requires a bit of hand holding to sort of to push that individual into, opening up his mindset towards what are the opportunities I can tap into within the economy. So it's empowerment programs should be a combination of factors. Yes, the assets and the tools and the finance is good, the skill is good, but the business advisory component, to some extent is also very critical.
For me, what would have been done differently is strengthening the early engagements of with government partners. In terms of the design of the project, there should be something that will make them commit. For example, now I'm mentioning a lot of successes in Kano, so but it's not happening in other states. Maybe in Kano, like I mentioned, because of the crowdfunding and that has been established, even though we have set up apprentice management committee in other states, but it's not really working as it is working now in Kano. So I think engagement and making government commit with some funding from the beginning, especially it should be reflected in their state development plan and policies. So that will now, I think, Mafita a better opportunity for sustaining a project like this. Because if there are no funding from government resources, and it should be reflected during the as a budget cycle, reflected in the budget and also in the state development plan. It should be in one of the reviews of the state development plan. It should be captured and then translated into budgets of the relevant MDAs. So I think this should have been done differently. If this has been done, we would have seen more results coming from other states where Mafita has operated. So I think this should have been, this is something that should be reflected if Mafita will be done, differently. Then another thing that should be done is improvement in terms of communication strategy and key messages that have been, sent out. So there should be rigorous communication strategy, key messages, also hosting radio programs, a lot of engagement with media houses, which is something that Mefita has not done. I could remember we did a lot of media engagements during Enable 2 program, but on Mafita program, there wasn't really strong communication strategy. So I think this will also improve. It's something that should be incorporated when a project is, being designed. Economic empowerment, like I said, for me, things are changing in the landscape everywhere in states, national, global. It is government, there should be a policy. Without a policy, whatever you're doing will not work. Without the support of government, whatever intervention you're bringing will not work. And then one key thing is globally, things are changing. Instead of, giving, it should have a focus of the private sector engagement. It should not only rely on government and international donor partners. Private sector should also contribute in terms of women economic empowerment. For example, like I mentioned earlier on the WE policy being, has been validated in Kano State, when it was being designed, there were a lot of engagement. The voice of the people at the grassroots should be also included. It should be all inclusive from the design. There should be a lot of, let's say, focus group discussions, have the voices of these women, marginalized women, because the policy is for them. We should not allow the men to develop policies that will not work for the women because the women know what they want. So it should be all inclusive. And then in terms of designing programs, the global thing now is going through competition. So we should be able to support women to go into this competition. I can give you an example on the project we are working on now. Like we give grants to women-led owned entrepreneurs that are into agribusiness. But we had challenges. What are the challenges? Most of these women do not even have the capacity to write a business plan. They are really doing the businesses at their level, but they don't know how to write these business plans. So we had to redesign and reshuffle our initiative when we came on board because we did a lot of research and we understood that we cannot move forward, especially for northern Nigeria. In the southern Nigeria, they are a bit more cosmopolitan. They operate more as there is more cohesiveness in terms of operations. But in northern Nigeria, even with the cooperatives, we give to SMEs and we give to cooperatives. So with the cooperatives in northern Nigeria, they operate individually, even when they are registered as cooperatives. So there are a lot of things that needs to be done from the government part and the private sector. Governments, there are a lot of ministries, departments, and agencies that have the mandate to support women. For example, Ministry of Commerce. Mafita has supported with an intervention called the Business Development Service. But what has happened after Mafita? We established a business clinic in Mafita. Even though the government started something, it was that I think at some point after Mafita, the Mafita staff was even appointed by government as an advisor to government on MSMEs and business clinics. But along the line, when the tenure of that government ended, it was not sustained. So the Ministry of Commerce has that mandate. So mandate should begin. That mandate, the ministry should continue to support women because we have seen. I was part of the scoring team. We have seen the applications. You could see that these women, they are really. If you talk to them one on one, they know what they are doing. They know their businesses. They know how to go. But for them to really structure their business plan, for someone to assess and then pass them through to the next stage and for them to access this grant is an issue. There is no governance structure. There are issues about governance structure also. So we need to support women to formalize their groups. And not only formalization just for them to access grants by government. Sometimes they register just to access the grants. Government grants should also have a different structure because government usually give grants, okay, these are marginalized women, let's give them 50,000 cash and that's all. I can go as a woman to just go and buy a goat or even give my husband to buy foodstuff for the family. Or if there is a wedding, I use that money for that wedding. But have some structure that will keep monitoring and ensure that these women are using this money to really do something economically. Like what we are doing now. We give you the grants, but we don't give you money. What we do is we submit quotations after you have been scored, due diligence, and what have you. These are something that government needs to be doing. Do due diligence. Establish that this is a fact that these women are really into this business. Support them with a business development advisor that will keep monitoring them and supporting them, coaching them, hand holding, and then make sure that this funding goes into that business. How? By giving them the funding in tranches according to milestone. And then also knowing that what you do is instead of giving you the cash, no, the woman should now identify a vendor and submit quotations, and then you send that money to the vendor. And the vendor now brings in whatever machinery these women need. And then you also set milestones on okay, as you are doing this business, how many more women will be impacted as a result of this intervention, as a result of this business idea that you have. We need to assess the business ideas. Women are doing a lot of things. They just need a little push. Yes, governments, there are a lot of, focus on women economic empowerment, but we need to have some systemic changes to be able to see that this thrives. So both the private sector and the government partners need to design something that will keep these women on track and also support them, like I mentioned, financial literacy, business development services, and access to technology, climate smart technologies, climate smart initiatives. And then we'll see a lot of difference in the society.
So that was the insights from Umer and from Hawa. Let's go to Yasmin first. What's your conclusion? What are your concluding insights on all of this?
Okay, thank you, Richard. So what really and thank you to both Hawa and Omar, Mr. Omar. So what really stood out to me about this episode and about the Mafita program was the ripple effect it had, not just on individuals but on entire families. They were examples of people that their lives were transformed overnight. Not overnight, literally, but like the change was to be seen within a year. Mr. Omar did share a story about a young boy. His name is Jibril, who was collecting dustbins and pieces of like bottles and just rubbish, and he his life transformed. He got into the program, and he was able to access opportunities and skills, and it transformed his life. He went from sorting waste on streets to being able to go on a plane to travel interstate and be able to participate in programs and everything. So I think it speaks to the kind of impact this program has, and how it's possible when people are given the right support at the right time. There was also another woman who was a child bride, and this is a very common phenomenon in the north, who got divorced and then had a child. She had no means of taking care of herself, neither the child, and then she got into the program, and she was able to, through skills, she was able to start empowering herself and even her sisters, and they also started participating in the economics of the community, and they were able to empower themselves. So I think it's striking how these individual stories of change didn't stop the individuals. Like they had their own marginalization, their own problem, and the beauty of this program is that it went to the lowest of the low to find people that genuinely needed help, and it created like a flywheel effect. They were the ones that set the tone for things to start moving. As one person gained agency, they empowered others around them. The momentum, small at first, but it started spinning faster and reaching more people and creating more communities. So I think, yeah, this was a very insightful episode. I was very happy to be part of this. So I think I'll just give Favor the floor to share her own insights and her own thoughts.
Thank you very much, Yasmin. And it's just like I said in the beginning, this is why we do what we do. This is why we are here. Because of stories like this, we see the possibilities that international development does change lives. And especially in this era where aid is getting bashed right, left, and center, is a time for us to reflect and see the change that occurs when people really put themselves and invest themselves into programs just like this. And just picking it up from where you stopped, I think what I would want to talk about is the importance of context, because Umar shared with us when they got there, both Umar and Hawa shared that, oh, they understand that this is not in Nigeria, where majorly we have the Islam faith and people are more conservative there. And it wasn't a matter of you personally might think, oh, this doesn't make sense, but you remember that you are here for the people. You are not here for your own mandate. You are here for the people. You are here to change their lives. And so it's a matter of how can we aid these people in a way that would continue to empower them, but within the confines of their own beliefs and their own traditions. If it's making room for them in the sense that, oh, let's train their women so that the women can do things that are normally known as a man's field, things like solar installation or satellite installation, and they can go there and husbands and fathers can feel safe when they are in their marketplaces, and so things work out like that. So that was the importance for me, and I think it's a big takeaway for development programs. How can we work within context, not things that are harmful, of course, but understanding who the beneficiaries are and how you can best aid them. And I think another thing I picked up on, and this was Umar's reflection on just advice or lessons for programs, development programs, is that he talked about why the program is so successful in a place like Kano, and why some programs just failed, they're not as successful, is that many people, they think it's just about training them, giving them the skill, and oh, goodbye. He was like, there's need for hand holding at a particular point. And so I think these are just lessons, and I hope our listeners, our policymakers, our project managers, our program managers as well, so that they can take lessons and we can continue to see programs like this across board. So those were just some of my key reflections.
Thank you, Favor. Thank you, Yasmin. I mean, to start off with, when this program was designed from the UK government side, it was designed very thoughtfully. So there was a young economist, not me, a much more thoughtful and considered economist who was in my team, who was given the job of designing a program that would be practical, hands-on, help some of the most marginalized in northern Nigeria, because northern Nigeria is where so many of the human development indicators are so far off track, right? So it's not about geopolitics, it's about the reality of the human development struggles which are in the north. And he went ahead to try and design this program in a way which was considered, in a way which he recognized that the evidence on the impact of technical vocational training programs and the impact that they could have on job creation was very limited. That there was a host of stories, a host of evidence around the world of where you train people with the skills, but it doesn't matter, because the jobs aren't there for the people with the skills to come into. And if you do train them with the skills, they're just displacing somebody else who didn't have the training. So you're not creating new jobs, you're just putting somebody else to the front of the queue who otherwise wouldn't have got it. And so he didn't design this program in a naive way. He designed it in a very considered, very thoughtful way that knew the skepticism and knew that it wouldn't be enough just to teach people technical vocational skills. And I think then what you see is from that business case, which is done in that very thoughtful way, right through to the team that come on the ground to implement this program, the wonderful people like Umair, Hawa, many more who they were just so committed to what they were doing, and they understood the context exactly as you both say. They understood what it was to live in the north, what would be required for the kind of change that was there. And they took this program forward. And I want to share a couple of personal examples which really struck me from the time. Yasmin has already mentioned, a couple of stories which were very compelling. One of which I knew the person, saw him at the beginning of the program, saw him at the end of the program, and I can testify to what a transformation in this young person's confidence there was. I mean, he was a different person by the end of this. But there was also people like Aisha, who in a class of, say, 25, 30, who were studying electrical engineering. She was there as one of two girls in that class. And of course, immediately when you go into the classroom and you see that there are only two women in that class, you want to understand their thinking around why, because it's quite a brave thing to do, right? To go into an area which is traditionally male dominated and still want to go in and do it, and still want to learn and train and all the rest. So Umair was with me and was able to translate. And I asked him to ask her, why does she want to do electrical engineering? What inspired her? And she replied, I wanted to prove that anything a man could do, a woman could do better. And it was such, she said it with good humor. She said it with a sort of a glint of mischief in her eye when she said it. But you could see that it was a sort of a fierce defiance of a system which potentially could limit her and could say where she couldn't go. And it reminded me a little bit, Yasmin, when we had the episode with on trade and non-oil exports with Titi Ojo, right? Occasionally you meet some characters who, despite how many limitations are put on them by society, by culture, by systems, they're just defiant about it, and they say, no, I'm not going to I'm going to find my own way through. And that's not to say that therefore that's fine, we should just leave the systems as they are, but it is remarkable when you meet these individuals, and actually what they're doing is they're creating pathways that others can follow. Because maybe in the first cohort, having two women there is a very strange thing, but by the time you do the second cohort of individuals, they have two people they can point to say, yeah, two other women did this, therefore it's not strange if I do electrical engineering. And for all the reasons culturally that Yasmin and Favor you've pointed to around, having, if somebody's coming in to do a repair in a house, having a woman do it when the wife of the husband is at home, can provide a lot of comfort to that family base based on culture and society there. There are a whole lot of good rationales why you would do that. So she was particularly impressive. And it was wonderful that the program did that. The other young lady that really impressed me in all of this was a young lady. Apologies, I forget her name, but she was studying catering, and she was disabled. She couldn't walk, and at the beginning of the course, at the beginning of the year, when we were speaking to the people in her class, again, sort of I went over to speak to her. Umair was there as well, could translate, and we said, "Oh, how are you getting on with the course?" She said that she was struggling, that she wants to even change course, that she can't reach the countertops, she couldn't reach the stove because of her disability, and therefore she wasn't able to participate. She wanted to go and switch to become a seamstress instead. But it wasn't that she wanted to be a seamstress, it was because the environment didn't enable her to do what she wanted to do in the first instance, which was catering. And one of the wonderful things about the Mafita program was it worked with that community skills development center to change the approach. The conventional approach is you can't reach the countertops, go and be a seamstress because you can do that. You can do that sitting down. You can do that from the floor, or whatever, which is not the right approach at all. But it's the way that traditionally these things have been done. What they did as part of the Mafita program and as part of the new modernized mindset of these community skills development centers was they said, you can't reach the countertops, you can't reach the stovetops, let's lower them so you can reach them. Let's adjust the environment, the workplace, so that you can participate and you can do that. And when you start doing that, that really is inclusion, right? That is the difference between sort of just trying to, that's how people participate, and that's how you get the best out of people, right? Because suppose she's a brilliant person at catering, but she never gets a chance to participate in it, we all lose out from her catering skills because we didn't accommodate her. We couldn't find ways to adjust the environment, and she goes off and maybe she becomes a okay seamstress. So the more we can make those accommodations in the workplace, the more chance we have to tap into people's natural talents. And also, it's a rights issue as well, right? Because everyone deserves the right to pursue, even if they're not the best person in the world or whatever. Everyone deserves the right to be able to pursue what they're passionate about, what they're interested in. And I'm very pleased that the Mafita program was able to do that. So that's the first set of things I want to talk about. It's when empowerment is real, it adapts and it ripples through, because that's the other aspect of this, right? And I think, Yasmin, you mentioned this a bit as well, about how this rippled through to families and communities when they started seeing women doing things that conventionally they weren't. It started to adjust what expectations were there and what could be done. And so I think it was really powerful in terms of how this fitted into the broader ecosystem of women's economic empowerment in the north of the country. I don't know, Favor or Yasmin, if you want to add in anything on top of that for that reflection.
So I just really liked the Aisha story because I think this construct about northern women being reserved and not wanting, because a lot of people when the land shifts towards the north, they would think, oh, the women wouldn't even want to do this. They are very reserved. So I think it's a very nice example that someone stood up and she was like, yeah, anything a man can do, I can do it, and I can even do it better. So yeah, I think that's the only thing I would want to add. But also, not only when you empower people or empower a particular person, it creates a ripple effect. But not only is that it's going to create a ripple effect, but it becomes almost inevitable, because that was the only thing, that was the only needed ingredient for development to happen, for change to happen, for transformation to happen in communities. And if this is applied everywhere in the north and even in the south, not just in Nigeria, just globally, if every single person is empowered the right way, if things are fitted into the context of every society, and I think we're going to see the flywheel effect everywhere. So yeah, that's just my own addition to what you've said, Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Yasmin. Sorry, go ahead, Favor.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to pick up on what you said about everyone deserve, even if they are not good at it, but everyone deserves that right. Everyone has that right to pursue the things that they are passionate about, and it's now a matter of, okay, how do we design programs that are accommodating, not even programs. I think you made reference to even workplaces as well, not just like, oh, you can't do it, sorry, do something easier, but how will people fulfill their potential? As I said, we would have missed out on a caterer that she might have become if that accommodation wasn't made. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Favor. I mean, I think I'll add in here. We've given a lot of personal examples of individual stories, and they always reach the heart, right? When you can actually see the difference that a program makes for an individual, it resonates at a human level with all of us. But as I said earlier, this was a program which was designed very thoughtfully, and it was designed where there was a lot of skepticism about whether this kind of international development was good value for money or not. And we've done a lot of work as Flywheel Economics on value for money, and the fear is when you do something which is quite costly in terms of it costs a lot of money to put an individual through, that it's somehow adjudicated as being poor value for money and not something which is sustainable. But of course, we know that good value for money analysis has the equity lens which is put in here. And this program is not based around sort of, taking the children of northern elites through to higher education or, fund their master's degree abroad or whatever. This is about the most marginalized people in society and getting them, I think as Umair said during his side, this was like primary school level kind of accreditation, right? This was a sort of certificate on vocational side, but could get them into the job market. And so, the there was a lot of skepticism in terms of when this took place. And so the economist who designed this also funded the World Bank to do an evaluation of the program to provide evidence of whether this was working or not. And one of the really remarkable things that the evaluation found, it was based, well, first thing to say on the evaluation, the gold standard of evaluation, and I say this, it can be a little bit controversial to say this, but often the gold standard of evaluations is when you can do like you would do in a medical trial, where you can have a control group and where you can have a treatment group, and you can look at the different outcomes between the control group and the treatment group. So treatment in this case is not rolling out a drug. It is rolling out a package of support like Mafita did, right? Whether it's through a community skills development center or through an apprenticeship, and there's additional support that the young people got, whether it was access to finance, access to tools and equipment, whatever it was as part of that package, that is effectively the treatment. And you can compare that with the control group who don't get that. And you see how different are the outcomes for the individuals through this. And what we were able to see is that actually there were very positive differences between those that got and it sounds silly to say this because it sounds almost absolutely self-evident that this would be the case. So do bear in mind this was coming from a place of skepticism. And so the bar for evidence was very high. And so having this randomized control type evaluation was really important to know about whether this kind of support should continue, whether it was worth doing this kind of support beyond just the really compelling individual stories that come through. And the World Bank evaluation, which is publicly available, it confirmed that women gained technical and social skills, saw increased earnings, and reported higher confidence and respect in their communities as a result of this Mafita program. It wasn't a program without flaws. There were many challenges that it had, a lot of them logistical. I remember that there were a host of procurement challenges in terms of trying to get the tools and equipment together. To the point where we had a visit from the Independent Commission from Aid Impact. Now, the Independent Commission for Aid Impact is a watchdog for the aid for the UK international development sector. It was set up in the light of UK skepticism towards the impact that international development assistance would have. And its objective was to try and evaluate the extent to which the international development assistance was having impact. So we had a commissioner come out to visit our program at a time when we'd had a host of challenges with the procurement of trying to get those tools and equipment, logistical challenges of trying to get the right tools, the right equipment to the right people, to the right community skills development centers and apprentices. So we were really worried that this was going to get a damning indictment because typically, these reviews that can be done, they are coming in with a critical eye, a skeptical eye, and they're looking to find faults. They're looking to find where things are falling short. And we knew there were a lot of imperfections, not because of a lack of willingness from those involved. Omer, Howard, the rest of the team were brilliant, but there was just the logistical challenge of doing business, trying to operate in northern Nigeria. The logistical challenges there were creating huge. It was a huge logistical operation. So we take the commissioner to the Community Skills Development Centre, and the commissioner is a wonderful woman. She's Tina Pham. She absolutely got the concept. A lot of people, an auditor by background, I believe, and so auditors are all about the detail. They're all about, but she got the big picture of it immediately. As soon as she met those beneficiaries, as soon as she met those young people, some of which have been mentioned in today's episode, she saw what it was about and she saw how transformational this program was, and she got it. And we were all fearing that this was going to be program was going to be damned because of the logistical challenges and all the rest of it, but it wasn't. It was actually commended by the Independent Commission for Aid Impact, and that was because she saw the big picture. She's a Nigerian living in the diaspora, so living in the UK, had a career in the UK, but she understood what this project was about. She could relate to it, and she saw and she got the significance of it all. Because I don't think everyone, particularly if you don't go and meet the young people involved in this, it can often be easy just to look at this as numbers on paper. But actually meeting some of these individuals, it really changes the understanding of what's going on. So there we go. I mean, I think, as a concluding thought from me, there are many international development programs which I think are worthwhile. The majority of international development programs that I've been involved with, I've felt are worthwhile. Good uses of UK taxpayer money, absolutely. There are very few programs, though, where I would have very happily added additional money from my own pocket to. And this was one of those programs where I would happily have added my own money, almost as a sort of, there was something almost sacred about this program and the impact it was having on young people's lives who otherwise had very little prospect whatsoever. And I think meeting those individuals, any skeptic of aid, if you take them to meet some of those young people at the beginning of the program, at the end of them, they won't be skeptics of aid after that. They will see the transformation that can happen. And so it's one of those really sacred type programs where you feel like, I don't just believe this program should exist, that the UK should be doing this kind of support. I would happily pile my own money additionally on top of what's been given by the general taxpayer money as well. So that's my concluding thoughts. Let's go back to Yasmin and Favor. Any final thoughts from either of you before Favor does the final wrap up? Yasmin?
I think we've covered everything, so I don't have final thoughts. Yeah.
Okay, over to Favor.
Yes, I agree. And I think it was during one of our Value for Money and Aid Effectiveness mini series. We said two things can be true. It's true that some taxpayers' money has been mismanaged, but it's also true that international development, Mafita program, and I think it's just refreshing to sit down and listen to Richard because you were there. So you have a first account, you witnessed the change, and to hear about it, I wasn't there, I didn't meet any of these people, but I feel so happy for them, and I'm thankful to the UK government, of course, for coming, and I'm thankful to all the Nigerians that worked on the ground to make sure that this program was a success. So yeah, and I'm really happy that we started our women's economic empowerment mini series, and trust us, I think we can crown ourselves as the king of podcast mini series. We have done so well. Affordable housing mini series, aid effectiveness is currently ongoing as well. And we assure you that this is going to be yet another information packed insightful and just fascinating time here at the Flywheel Economics podcast. So we invite you come along with us on this ride. Remember that you can leave us your thoughts and comments on our social media pages. We are on X, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Flywheel Economics. Also head over to our website at flywheeleconomics.com to check out other things that we release. Until next time, this has been the Flywheel Economics podcast.